I think we're going to see 1 million this year. Bitcoin price has been suppressed for a very long time. We should have hit these levels at maybe 100K a few years ago. But if you look at the amount of fraud that was perpetrated by FTX and other companies, that's really what stole the 100K from Bitcoin in 2021. We should have been there, but they stole that. Our thesis is that we are going to this hyper-Bitcoinized state. That's the final step. But in between, there has to be a transition from the fiat system into this new system.
Right.
And I don't believe a lot of countries are well prepared. And I also believe this transition is going to happen very rapidly. It's not a matter of decades out. It's probably within the next 5 to 10 years.
Samson Mow's prediction that Bitcoin will reach $1 million is seen by many as controversial and unrealistic. Critics argue that global macroeconomic conditions and rising geopolitical tensions make such a forecast particularly implausible. However, the CEO of January 3rd contends that these very factors will drive Bitcoin's price to $1 million eventually. Mow asserts that even a minor disruption in the financial system could significantly boost Bitcoin prices. He believes that such a disruption would expose the world's over 8 billion people to the inherent flaws and potential collapse of the current monetary system. According to Mow, this disruption will likely start in the U.S. bond market, traditionally considered the world's safest financial market, but now exhibiting increased volatility compared to other asset classes. Mow envisions a scenario where a loss of confidence in the U.S. government's ability to manage its enormous debt leads to a rapid breakdown of the monetary system, prompting a frantic search for alternatives. In a recent conversation with podcaster and journalist Frenigson, Mow discussed the idea of hyper-Bitcoinization, the potential for nations to adopt Bitcoin, and his $1 million Bitcoin prediction.
Stop. You don't have time. Don't miss out this 2025 bull run. Educate yourself first ahead of the crowd. We have created the ultimate step-by-step crypto cheat guide that will guide you this bull run. Unlock the secrets of crypto and make smarter investments today. Now by clicking on the link below to get your exclusive copy just under $10.
I believe hyper-Bitcoinization is an inevitability, and we are just speeding it up a little bit by trying to get the nation states on board. Jan 3, we work with governments, work with politicians, regulators, central banks too if they're open to discussions. We're engaging with them to help them implement a Bitcoin strategy, because our thesis is that we are going to this hyper-Bitcoinized state. That's the final step. But in between, there has to be a transition from the fiat system into this new system. And I don't believe a lot of countries are well prepared. And I also believe this transition is going to happen very rapidly. It's not a matter of decades out. It's probably within the next 5 to 10 years.
Really?
Yes. And that means a lot of places are ill-prepared for this transition. And being unprepared for that transition means that a lot of people will suffer. Similar to demonetization events in the past. If you look at India in 2016, they pulled some currencies out of circulation, and a lot of people died. About a dozen people died during this very tumultuous demonetization event. And it's just removing a few bills of circulation, but people were lining up at the bank. Some were dying of exposure. Some were not able to pay medical bills because they had the old bills, and the hospital wouldn't take the old ones because they're worried that it's going to be worthless. But if you take that and extrapolate that to the whole world, we have about 8 billion people that need to onboard into Bitcoin still. And we're nowhere prepared to do that. El Salvador is decently prepared. They have their national wallet. They have some education programs. They're teaching people in schools. And they have Bitcoin law. But other places are not prepared. So what we hope to do is facilitate that and get some form of Bitcoin adoption now so that they have a few years' time to gracefully move into Bitcoin as a parallel track to the fiat track and be ready for that point at which fiat dies. We come at Bitcoin adoption in terms of incentives and trying to align incentives for them to Bitcoin. And typically this is in line with mining. So if they have excess energy, and a lot of more developing, poorer countries in the world have a lot of untapped energy reserves, they just have no way to access them and no money to build hydro dams and geothermal plants and the such. So we look at and see what they need. If they need infrastructure like airports, roads, whatever, hospitals, they could mine Bitcoin and pay for those things with Bitcoin because they have untapped energy, or they're just throwing away excess energy. That's what we go to the governments with. We
Okay.
go and see what they need and what we can do to make the incentives align together. Or it could be that they have ESG goals and they want to remove flare gas installations. And you can do that mining Bitcoin. So we just kind of try to figure out all the different pieces of the puzzle that appeal to them and approach it that way. But we don't talk about the hyper-Bitcoinization
Got
end
it.
game and things like that. Because I think
For Samson Mow, getting countries and nation-states to adopt Bitcoin is a matter of freedom and restoring balance in the world. As a Canadian, the January 3rd CO references the Canadian government's overreach during the Freedom Convoy protests in 2022. The Justin Trudeau-led government invoked the Emergencies Act, an extraordinary piece of federal legislation, granting itself additional powers which it then used to abuse citizens' rights. Not only were protesters forcibly removed from the protest grounds, but those who donated to their cause were also demonized and continuously harassed by the government. Banks readily helped freeze the personal accounts of the organizers, cutting them off from banking services without any court authorization. Mow warns that many other governments will resort to such tyrannical activities when the great fiat Ponzi begins to collapse. They will do everything to stop people from taking control, including seizing all properties and assets within the system. Here are more clips from the interview.
I think at the end of the day, governments are still made up of people. And you can have bad governments because there are bad people, weak people in the government, like Trudeau. And there's plenty of examples of this. But you can also have good people in the government that want good things for their constituents. But the Bitcoin adoption aspect is critical, I believe. And this is why a lot of us are galvanized around Jan 3 in our mission, because we can see Bitcoin changing the government, changing the relation between the state and a citizen of the state, whereby you're not just a tax slave anymore, but you're someone that has to be respected and listened to, because now they can't just take your stuff, right? You can't print money anymore. Like, inflation is basically hidden money printing. People don't realize it, but you can print money explicitly or implicitly through inflation.
Yep.
You can tax people explicitly or tax people secretly through inflation.
Yep.
And with Bitcoin, you can't do that anymore. And if you look at a lot of government policy, the bad policy, most people would never agree to things like what they're doing. Like in Canada, we have the Arrive Can scandal, or Arrive scam, as they're calling it now.
What is that?
It was during COVID. They had an app that you had to put your vaccination status and update everything every time you entered and left Canada.
Right.
And they spent $84 million on this app that just logged data, basically. And a recent revelation was the CEO of ArriveCan was actually a government employee at the National Defense Department of Defense. So there's a lot of corruption, and Bitcoin can fix all of this, I believe. But the point is, there are a lot of bad things governments can do to people, and Bitcoin removes the ability for them to do that, because now you kind of have to ask people to put up money, whether it's for war or for ArriveCan or something, and people wouldn't agree to spending money in that way. So it restores a balance, I believe, to the force. But not everyone can vote with their feet. Some people have
Sure.
to stay for whatever reasons.
Sure.
And there's also the challenge of can you leave too? Because we've learned through COVID that mobility can be stopped. So I think we have to at some point engage with the governments. We can't just flee. There's only so many places we can go. Like, in theory, we could all flee to El Salvador. But then what happens to El Salvador?
Yep.
If every country is a fiat country and controlled by the money printers and we're all in El Salvador, well, they can just nuke us or something, right? So we have to fight back, and we have to engage to bring more allies to the Bitcoin
Where
side.
we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we will get there simply because of necessities. Governments, at the end of the day, need money. How do you maintain a standing army for defense if you cannot pay the soldiers? If your money is worthless? And we've seen examples of this from history, where the government can't pay the soldiers, and that's it. If the soldiers want Bitcoin, then maybe you need to have Bitcoin. So it becomes a national imperative for them actually to have sound money. And this is why a lot of governments buy gold, because they know that the fiat money is just a game, a thinly held together by tape game that is going to fall apart at any time. That's why they're buying gold. So
Yes.
Bitcoin is just new.
In other news, Galaxy Digital CEO Mike Novogratz has identified 3 factors he believes could drive Bitcoin to new all-time highs in 2024. These factors include a Federal Reserve rate cut and a significant regulatory breakthrough. During a recent interview published on Galaxy's YouTube channel, Novogratz noted the resurgence of concerns about the slowing economy, which he believes will be beneficial. "I don't think Bitcoin will surpass its previous high of $73,000 unless we see action from the Fed or a major regulatory breakthrough," he stated. Novogratz also expressed confidence in an upward trend for Bitcoin, anticipating that as the election approaches, Fed Chair Jerome Powell will be inclined to cut rates. Another bullish factor, according to the Galaxy Digital CEO, is the substantial amount of U.S. federal government spending and increasing debt, which he believes will drive more people to invest in Bitcoin as digital gold. Novogratz remarked, "Having really poor policymakers and profligate spenders and populists in Washington is great for my net worth." That's the story of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is rising for the same reasons gold is rising, but it's doing so faster because we are a newer technology and commodity, leading to a quicker adoption cycle. Please share your thoughts on Samson Mow's $1 million Bitcoin prediction and Novogratz's comments. For more Daily Dose Crypto news, check out these 2 awesome videos on your screen. Click now and we will see you on the next video.